everybody, welcome to Scopa. Welcome to this session of our last session. I've got a great speaker today who is Art-Willem de Wolf. Art-Willem, if you could please put up your slides so you can start sharing your screen so that we can actually start to see who it is that's speaking, and I'll walk everyone through exactly how it is that we need to participate, because there's going to be some questions and answers. So in your first slide, you see here that we're going to be discussing becoming a data-driven leader, turning insights into impact with pace and certainty. I love that title. And we're going to be speaking with Art-Willem de Wolf, who is the managing partner for R&G Global Consultants. They've been proudly supporting us for this event on supply chain optimization and analytics. If we go to the next slide, I'll walk everyone through the logistics. So again, if you're joining us for the first time, please feel free to scan the QR code on the right-hand side, where you'll be able to get access to Slido, which is the mechanism that we've got in order to ask questions. And we are going to ask a number of questions because by now we will have digested a great deal of information throughout the afternoon on from several key speakers. So this session is going to have that Q&A. You need to go to the room, which is #ScopaDigital. Your questions will be addressed once the presentation is over. And we are going to be recording this session. So just be aware. If you have any technical difficulties whatsoever, please don't hesitate to shout out to one of my team members. Priya at futureinsights.org is going to be waiting for you. So I guess I might as well get started and introduce Art-Willem. Maybe if you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your journey so far, and I'll let you carry on with your slides.
Excellent. Thanks, Maria. Hi all. Good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. Let me get to this page, a data-driven leader. Just introducing myself. I've been in supply chain and operational companies for over 25 years now. I have been running supply chain operations for various companies. And when at the early days of my career, I became a master black belt and in the Six Sigma domain at General Electric, and that's actually where processes, data, and leadership started to influence my professional journey. So I'm happy to be with you in this session. We already had a couple of very interesting sessions, I think, that all touched upon the leadership of digitization, how to become a data-driven leader. So I hope this will be another inspiring session for you. I basically want to take you through this session based on four, straightforward questions. What is a data-driven leader? At least how we define it as R&G and how we work at it with our clients. As a second question, why is it actually relevant? So also raise the why question, let's not assume. Third question is really about what is the fastest way to make impact on your supply chain performance in your end-to-end supply chain. And the fourth question is really why is it so challenging and what makes it challenging, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So let me talk a little bit of what is a data-driven supply chain leader. And I'd like to pull up this our data-driven leadership model and talk to it a little bit. You might have seen it in one of the previous workshops with one of my colleagues. The model looks very straightforward, right? There's a business purpose, why you exist, why your company is there in this society, what it wants to attribute, and you want to enhance that purpose by making business impact for your clients, for your shareholders, for your stakeholders. And then there's 5 key steps in between, right? We sit on tons of data, taking that into analysis, and more important than turning that analysis into insights, information, which then feeds the decision making and taking it into execution. So as straightforward as it could be, I would say. Nevertheless, we know there's many challenges along this data journey, right? Talking about data, what is your data quality? How do you connect data? Talking about analytics, besides the analytical tools, you have the analytical capability within your organizations. How do you turn information into shared cross-functional insights, right? Are these insights shared? And then, are you willing to accept these insights and take decisions that might be counterintuitive And how do you use data to monitor execution, not only from a technical end, but also from a behavioral end. So I think absolutely essential leadership questions that you will have to answer during this journey, whilst you build the capabilities, the top part, and whilst you work on your performance management system. We call that an operating system, right? So steering towards performance and managing process performance and behavior as you go about it. So if we look at data-driven leadership, right? I like to say it's not about data. It certainly is about data, but it's about the driven leadership, right? So, and the driven piece is obviously in the domain of making business impact, right? That could be growth, productivity, service, well, all the things that are relevant for a business performance from a customer perspective or a financial perspective. It is about a data-driven approach, right? Selecting certain digital tools to work with. It is about accelerating implementation, right? So we call this focused continuous improvement initiatives. One of the key challenges here is there's always more ideas than can actually be executed, but also not all ideas are good ideas in the perspective of making the change and making impact, right? So as a data-driven leader, you will be challenged to select the right ideas, and I'll talk more about the right ideas from an impact perspective. And certainly also touched upon in the previous session, how do you actually use data to drive cultural change? It's very clear that it is an eminent aspect in the change process, but how do you do this as a leader by using data? And what we see in practice, the impact domain is fairly clear. The data-driven approach is so clear, but the cultural elements are really the weakest part. So connecting operational data to a desired cultural aspects, cultural behaviors, and not only try to strive to get to the business impact, but at the same time work at these cultural change, which is actually a prerequisite in most cases. Right, so data-driven leadership for us covers all these four domains across the data-driven model as I shared. So why is it relevant to be a data-driven leader in the supply chain? Just let's not assume this. So I'm referring to a recent survey of Egon Zehnder, where they had asked over 200 senior supply chain leaders across the globe what their key priorities actually are. At the left side you see them, you see the scores. On the right hand side I just took the keywords, right? So this is basically about teams and cultural building, teams with capabilities. It clearly is, as always, I would almost say, cost and efficiency challenges, customer responsiveness, adjusting supply chain models, and digital transformations. And if you look at these topics, and you want to play them end to end, they are typically data-driven topics. But we also know, since they are end to end and therefore cross-functional, to align across these functions, you will mostly likely need a serious amount of data to gain insights, to align with your peers within the management team, within the board, across the various departments. So data is key in order to achieve these changes, which are typically on the high on the agenda of supply chain leaders. Then moving on, if you look at supply chain strategies, so still with the why is it important? We think we can summarize your supply chain strategy in this triangle, right? It's either about redesigning, it's about simplification in connection to your product portfolios, or it's about reliability improvement, becoming faster, becoming cheaper, becoming better, and possibly, of course, supported by digitization. Now, let's just take an example, right? Simplification, touching upon your product portfolio. If you want to simplify for whatever strategic purpose, you will need to understand the impact on your financial margins. You will need to understand the consequence for your asset utilization. Same for labors. You will need to understand the impact for suppliers. So all these things, they will need to be validated, typically through data. And then you hit, when we do these types of analysis, the functional walls of data sets, right? I'd like to say not only people think functional, the data is also functional. And therefore you need to start connecting data across these various domains in order to get a business view rather than a functional view or a selected view from one angle, right? So this stimulates in today's world with all this data that is around to become a data-driven leader in order to address your supply chain strategy. Let's move on to the third question, right? So what is the fastest way to impact the supply chain performance? It goes without questioning that everybody seeks improved performance of the supply chain for various reasons. Keep your company healthy financially, keep your customers happy, keep your talents on board. So there can be multiple reasons why you like to increase your supply chain performance. At R&G, we like to talk to the data-driven leadership route. So let me briefly explain the simple model on the left side. So vertically, you have the business impact, low impact, high impact. Of course, everybody likes to move towards the high impact domain. And horizontally, we have the technology focus, where you can, in terms of high technology, you can move to completely different platforms, go heavy on robotization or artificial intelligence or machine learning. You can stay on the more conservative end of technology focus and step in the domain, for example, of process mining, which you actually can build up gradually over time, as we have seen with ABB, for example, this afternoon. So we call that the low technology focus. Now, what we are seeing with our clients is that, one, the digital transformation route is extremely challenging. As you can see in that bullet, many of these transformation projects or programs are not successful in terms of delivering the value. They might be successful of technically installing it, but not in terms of delivering the value. They always come with significant capex, whereas actually you are already on top of a lot of data. Right? It has been said, research shows that only 3 to 5% of the industrial data is actually used. So you are on top of that gold mine. So why not start utilizing the data, the value that sits within this data? First, learn about your real performance, start making your processes more robust. Apply some technology to this, right? Big data tooling like Alteryx or process mining, Celonis, as we have seen, or dynamic reporting, right? So definitely some technology will be required. But if you move basically vertically and then horizontally, you will be rewarded with a better return on your digital transformation once you start moving horizontally again, right? So the fastest route is, as we have seen, take value from your existing data, low technology entry, start learning, start making your processes better, faster, more robust, and gain benefits. The other key thing, if you're seeking a fast impact towards performance, is in two domains, right? This is about the operating rules, which will be within your company, and it's about the metrics. So let me talk about the operating rules. So this is your book, which says this is how we want to run our business, this is how we want to run our operations, our supply chain process on a tactical, operational, strategic level. What we find is that these rules, they might exist in an explicit way, and then you will probably require data to validate if these rules are being adhered to or not, pretty essential. But what you also find is that many of these rules, they exist, but they are way more implicit. Management typically is not fully aware of the rules that have been adopted in the organization. And again, data can help you here to find out what are the implicit rules that actually determine the performance of your company. So managing these rules, and with that the degrees of freedom, is essential. If we talk about metrics, what we see all the time is I call these a bit sharp, a bit black and white, manipulated metrics. Metrics that try to tell us that we're good, that we're fine, where actually the customer experience is a totally different service level. So if you can tweak the metrics from two perspectives, make them more outside in, reflective of what your customer truly feels and experiences, and secondly, make them more diagnostic metrics by looking into the variance that your customer experiences on a transactional level, you will make important steps. So if you want to drive your speed to impact, your time to impact as a leader, we highly recommend to tap into these two domains, the operating rules and the metrics, because in summary, on the rules, you deserve what you tolerate, and on the metrics, you get what you measure. So changing these will definitely speed up your journey towards impact, and data is a great supporting aid in this domain. So final question, what makes it challenging to become a data-driven leader and make that targeted impact, right? You can write books about this question. I just have 2 slides that I want to take you through. What we typically see and what we also hear during conferences, etc. Companies have lots of stuff, right? They certainly have a lot of data. Everybody runs with KPIs and dashboard nowadays. Most companies have BI or IT and data analysts in place. They have the tools, they have the warehouses, they have programs. But typically, even when having this, there is still a need for more results. The results are partially there, they're not there. You want to move to the next level. Many leaders talk about an improvement of accountability of their team, actually to move, therefore be able to move to a next level. Capability is, of course, a hot topic. So surveys show that 70% of the companies doesn't have the capabilities which they would like to have to perform better. There's always the speed aspect, and they would love to have the chain work as a team. That includes your partners in the supply chain. So there's the haves and the have-nots, right? And it raises a question, why is this? How can you have all these halves and still not have the right end of the picture to the full extent, right? And we think there's a bit of a fundamental flaw in how we look at leaders. So consciously, I take this very old formula, which I'm sure you've all known and have been trained at. At the same time, I'd like to challenge you a little bit and say, well, maybe we've forgotten about this formula. Because if you take the why as being the business impact domain, it is very easy to have your own mental picture about this why, this outcome. It is much more challenging to have your leadership being harmonized around a same data-driven view of the business challenge or the customer issues, etc. Right? So using data to harmonize around your why, your outcome is key. Great place to start. Then if we move to the X being the item, the solutions which need to be implemented, adopted in order to get the desired impact. Typically what we find is they are dominated by functional views, and therefore most companies suffer with initiative overload. They don't get into full implementation on all the ideas. Maybe the critical ones are not addressed, the non-critical ones might be addressed. There is potentially a waste of resources, so absolutely essential leadership piece. And then of course the key sits in the middle. The causality is a function of, which many leaders replace by experience and expertise, right? And if you want to be a data-driven leader, it is great to challenge this is a function of with the question, do I know or do I think I know? And if I say to myself, I know, what shows me that I know, right? And if you start to challenge yourself and your colleagues like this, and that becomes part of your culture, you will see that you open up for more insights addressed to you, brought to you by data and by analytics and by insights. And I'd like to refer also in this context to the iceberg of ignorance, right? Let's not assume we know. Let's assume the experts are in the organization, which is the case. So how can we connect our knowledge, our insights to the data that they generate, the insights that they have, to not anymore assume we know, but to be sure we know. Then a final slide. I like this statement. It was done by our founding father, and he said it's not the complexity of the process, because really, if you look at most supply chains, right, there's multi-level suppliers, there's a make process, there's a distribution process. In the essence, it's not that complex. We've made it complex because of robustness of execution, unreliability piece. We need second, third source suppliers, etc. We get quality issues, you name it. All those things create complexity. And since it's hard to see through, this complexity creeps into our minds as supply chain leaders and determines our views, often also from a functional and responsibility area. So I think changing the impact or accelerating towards the impact of your supply chain is really about decomplexing the views of the leaders that determine what changes will be implemented. And if you're a data-driven leader, challenge your own views, try to investigate what your own assumptions are, test them with data, do the same with your peers and your teams and your organization. And I can promise you there will be fantastic insights which will help you to create a better culture and move faster into a better supply chain performance. With this, I would like to close off my part and go into the Q&A, Maria.
Thank you, Art Willem. I appreciate that. I'm gonna take it from your last slide there, that the problem isn't data per se, or the problem probably isn't even technology. The problem is people, right?
I agree. Whether it's a problem, I don't know, but that's where, of course, where the biggest challenge is. How do you combine those three things, right? People, data, and process. That in that triangle is the challenge. Yeah.
Well, and like this says, you know, it's the people's thinking around those problems, you know, and what their limitations are, etc. Right. If you want to stop sharing your screen, we can then go off to some questions. So for those of you, again, that are haven't been using Slido, so just stop, put the share screen, you can undo, there you go, perfect. Yep. So for those of you guys that are watching us and have been using Slido, so slido.com, hashtag Scopa, as you can see, we've already got a bunch of questions. So Art Willem, have a look at those questions. We've already got a couple that have been voted on. So let's start with the first one. How can you be a data-driven leader and still be visionary? Part of leadership is about finding new paths, not necessarily already mapped by data.
No, absolutely, absolutely true. And I love the question, because I think actually one would not go without the other one. So one being the visionary, right? In the data-driven leadership model, we start with a reason, with the purpose. Right, so you can take this to the extreme. Why does your company exist? What is the purpose for your clients? What is your purpose in society, if you will? But you will have to translate this back into what does this mean for our processes, the processes that we like to have. I think that second part is, my saying is, no data is data too. So if something is important within your vision and you find there is no data to support the improvements, the journey toward that vision, then technology comes typically at the forefront and say, how can we create and apply, how can we create data by applying technology which will actually bring us toward our vision. So for me, it is actually a very logical evolution from data that you have, optimization which you can do with low tech, and then moving into high tech for two reasons. You will get closer to your vision, and secondly, you will have much better return on capacity and capex deployed because you invest in more robust processes.
How do you get buy-in to data-driven management? You know, are people skeptical, especially at board level? And I'm gonna add to that. How do you make the business case for data-driven leadership?
Yeah, by applying it to the business. That's the only. I mean, we can talk about the concept for hours on end, right? But I think when we start these conversations with clients and prospects, we move to their management agenda and say, what keeps you awake at night? What is challenging for you from a financial perspective, from a customer perspective, from an innovation perspective? And we find if they acknowledge they have some challenges or simply problems in certain cases, and if they allow you to enter their, let's say, data lakes, and of course the teams that need to help you with the understanding of the processes and the data, etc., and you start to slowly build up these pictures through data and engage them in the journey, you typically find that management teams are opening up. So what we love to do is say, give me your views, right? What are your assumptions? And sometimes they're not even aware they are assumptions about your views on this particular data, this performance area. And then if you engage them in this way and prove them right or partially right or bluntly said wrong, and you do this with a cross-functional management team, there is a relief of energy actually from these teams typically, because the facts start to come to the table, and if you try to create a safe environment that it is part of the discovery and no blaming and no finger pointing, professionals like this. Of course, you hit sometimes situations where it's a tough ride, but mostly professional like this way of approaching it, putting it into the business context and make them part of the journey.
Willem, what about this? I mean, do you think sometimes when you approach companies that they don't necessarily see that data is at the heart of both their problem and their solution? What I mean by that is you just asked, you know, when you go into companies, you ask them, what is keeping you up at night?
Yeah.
There are a million things, but do they see the direct line to data and there as the way to solve their problems?
Conceptually, yes. Practically, not always. I mean, today you don't need to talk to leaders anymore. The data is important, right? Everybody will say yes. But then...
Yeah, but that's conceptual.
Exactly. And if you then ask, how does this work for you, right? We still find people, I think Keith alluded to it in the panel discussion, that put their trust in technology rather than putting the trust in technology and process and behavior and operating system in order to get a return. That is much more a challenge. So yes, data, great, but then if you ask the leaders, okay, how are you developing capabilities within your organizations? Well, you find a very huge variation of companies that take this very, very serious. They install analytical teams, and companies that have not even adopted in the past something like Lean and Six Sigma, and the full scale is still there. So that's where, well, depending on the maturity of the company that you talk to, it's a bit more in the defensive mode or fully adapted and accepted to move forward.
So isn't the challenge then to some degree explaining the business value really of being able to implement technology and the processes and the operational efficiency, all of that wrapped into one, as opposed to just technology for the sake of technology?
No, absolutely. But then that starts with leadership acknowledging that the current performance is not good enough, right, or they need to take a next step. And we still see, and that's why I refer to the manipulated KPIs. There's so many KPIs, and I don't mean this from an integrity perspective, right? But from which data do you put into the KPI? I think the ABB case was a nice reference for this as well. The moment they started to take this straight from the data sets and taking out the opportunity to adjust or scope the data sets that go into the KPIs, it became fairly emotional because it became pure. Right, and that's what I mean with, if you can take it into the pure signal and have acceptance for their performance, then the journey can start. As long as people think their current KPIs, either in definition and or performance, are fine, well, pointless to start, because what is the data going to bring in addition to a perceived good performance?
Yeah, I get that. I think, Art Willem, we've reached the end of this session, unfortunately. We've got obviously still a lot of questions, but no doubt what we'll do is that there'll be a number of opportunities for people to engage and interact with the team of RNG to answer some of these questions, and we'll help arrange that and introductions and so forth for you guys, because there clearly is some interest in this. Art Willem, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for participating and giving us some viewpoints on how we can turn to data-driven leadership.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for the opportunity, and speak soon again. Thanks. Have a good day.
Speak soon. So the rest of us, we're going to stay on here now, and I'm going to invite Keith back into this session. Keith, you're back there as well. Art Willem, you're still here. You can still stay if you want to.
Yeah, let me stay in a few minutes.
Yeah, great. Okay. So I wanted to sort of wrap up some of the learnings that I've had, and maybe talk to Keith about some of the things that we've seen. For me, and Keith, I know you've been in a lot of these sessions, we keep coming back to people. I think that's, for me, the biggest thing that we've talked about throughout every single session has been the people, either at leadership level, so convincing leaders as to the value of data-driven, a data-driven methodology and leadership within their business, getting people to get buy-in at both a leadership level as well as a management level, as well as lower level downs, getting them to buy into this approach. That's big takeaway from me. To me, something else that you said, which was that Amazon, Keith, that Amazon to me is the pinnacle of supply chain excellence, but yet it's a data-driven business. And I think getting people to think about it that way was mind-blowing to me. So those really are the biggest takeaways that I've had, as well as to stay competitive in this complex, crisis-filled environment that we're in. Getting to understand your clients is more important now than ever. It was always important, but getting to understand them is now more important than ever, which means diving into the data.
Yeah.
Keith, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, Maria. I think, if we reflect on today's sessions, we heard, Roddy talking about the analytics maturity models. We saw a great example from Wayfair on how they're embedding analytics into the business. From ABB, it's that adoption of process mining, and then Edith, taking the thinking a little bit more broadly, and then obviously now with Art Willem talking about the let's say the driven leadership elements of data-driven leadership. I think, to summarize, Maria, you've already kind of summarized it. Ultimately, it comes back down to the people. And I think if I reflect upon what I've heard over the course of today, and also recent experiences, I think ultimately to be successful at supply chain optimization and embracing the analytics and some of those digital solutions, for me, it basically comes down to four key things. For the leadership teams, the people, it's about giving capability, whether that's technology, whether that's digital solutions, or whether that's new skills to the resources. I think that's one mission critical element of getting this right. I think the second is really eliminating those kind of culture or data culture limiting beliefs. The fact that technology alone doesn't bring the value. IT and the business can actually work well together. Going deep into the data does tell a story. So getting rid of those cultural limiting beliefs, I think, is also key. And then building let's say a common language and a unified approach to do analytics and to do optimization in a repeatable fashion across an organization, no matter what the topic is to be addressed, no matter what department it is that you work within. Building that kind of common unified approach is key. And then last but not least, I think is I've heard it through all of the presentations today. It's about killing this kind of heroic leadership syndrome. The new leaders need to recognize that the new leaders will be the digital adopters, and we can't know everything that there is to know when it comes to digital technology. You need to relinquish some of that say, business ownership. You know, we will no longer be the supply chain leadership teams that bring the insights. It will be with the democratization of the data and with the access to the new tools, new skills, new capabilities that the whole team within an organization should have. Leaders now need to kind of give way and give passage to the new insights that will come from the new roles and the new capabilities that exist across the business. So for me, Maria, I think it's been a great day. It's been great to hear all of the different insights, all the different perspectives from many people in different regions. And yeah, Maria, I'd like to thank you for the time and for the opportunity to work with you on the event.
Thank you. Art Willem, what about you? Any takeaways that you've got?
Oh, it's what Keith said, fully supported. What I like is always these applied cases. ABB, right? Absolutely nice reference. I can say, at least from my experience, that they are the runners-up with this approach that they're taking, at least in comparison to many others. So these applied cases, I think they strengthen the story, and let's call it programming, Maria. I'm not completely sure how it went behind the screens, but the fact that there was a workshop around this topic and then an applied case makes it a very nice combination, right? Otherwise, it's consultants talking, and I always say, well, you shouldn't trust the consultants, right, in these sessions. So
you said it, not me.
Really?
No, I said it. So we better have a client or a company showing these practical cases.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, I think the consultants can bring the following to the table. You guys get to see a lot of what succeeds and what fails across multiple industries. You know, you get to see behind the scenes of a lot of things, and I think it's important to bring that to the table. But you're right, getting to hear from ABB and Wayfair about exactly how they've done it within their organizations, where they've succeeded, where they've failed is absolutely invaluable. I think it's also important nowadays with that we're hopefully coming out of the pandemic or heading into our new normal. I mean, that's another word, phrase that's been thrown about a lot, but it's important to look at our supply chains. It's important to look at what's worked, what has worked in the past, and what's going to work post-COVID, looking at optimizing and going back to some of the slides that you had. What are the motivators? Why are we going to make these changes? How are we going to redesign our supply chains, build a resilient supply chain, and how are we going to stay competitive in a complex area, a complex time?
Yeah. No, but I think, if you're not prepared for it yet, or you were not prepared and you were thrown into this COVID disaster, many got penalized for not having their, say, operating systems organized and doing this remote. So this whole thing will just accelerate, and because it had to. But I think once you got into the acceleration, it's also likely that it will continue to go in that direction. So in that sense, it's a bit of a blessing, although there's lots of pain, of course, in many places. But
well, there's a lot of opportunities that may come of this,
Yeah, no, exactly. That's our read of it. To get going with them is of course step two. Well, the fact that they start thinking this along the digital lines, even in the basics of let's get laptops organized, remote working possible, etc., is absolutely playing us into the cards and helping. So in that sense, very positive.
Well, I think now with COVID, we are going to probably get different, with more online shopping behaviors, more data is going to start coming into the business. We're going to look at people working remotely. I mean, we've already seen that. So I think we have an opportunity here to optimize the way that we run our supply chains, and data is at the heart of it. Having people that understand the value of data is also at the heart of that. I think I still get people talking to me about how digital transformation or the purchase of XYZ technology has not met their expectations. And so I'm sure we hear that on a regular basis. And so we can't just blame all the technology. We have to look at
exactly.
of
I
culture.
think there's still too many people that put their hopes on technology in a too limited way, which is nice and I think the real hope is that they do not need to address the cultural challenges, because that's much harder. But one day it will pop up again that you still have to address it. There's no way to avoid it. So I think that is one. And I think, Marie, also for the consultancy sector, right? We talk about sustainability consulting, right? So once you implement these operating systems and fix it, that you do the remote monitoring, with all kinds of tweaks to it. So I think also for ourselves, right? Things are substantially changing how we should look at the future in terms of the field of competition, but also in terms of the possibilities that we can bring to clients. So that sense.
Very much agree. Well, I'd like to thank both of you, Art Willem and Keith. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being part of this. If you would like to get more information, those of you that are watching, if you need to, I love that question. Does your business process need significant improvement? I don't think there would be anyone that would say, no, we're good. You know, we're all good. We're great. Everybody needs this. So please visit rnggc.com to find out how RNG can transform your business processes. So thank you very much to RNG Global Consultants. We appreciate you being on here. And everyone else, thank you so much for joining us. We've got some other information for you that I'd like to go over very briefly. There we go. So we have got a session coming up on the 7th of July. From demand planning to demand sensing, a case study from Ecolab. Again, going into what we just talked about, getting case studies is also very important and something that we always need to be looking at. Please continue to join us. We have a community, which is Supply Chain Connect, and you can be part of the conversation. You don't miss any virtual interactive experience workshops that we run. This is a sample of some of the sessions that we've had recently with some very high-level people. So if you'd like to join our community and be part of these sessions, watch some of these on demand, ask questions of some of the biggest names in the industry, by all means, please do that. And equally, we would like you to be part of this, be part of the online network that we've got. So if you'd like to join us, please, you can find more information on our website to join Supply Chain Connect and tap into a lot of the on-demand case studies that we've got, curated articles. And also, guess what? You can chat with a lot of the other members and maybe have conversations, carry them further from the sessions that you're having. So I think, thank you very much for that. I think there we go. We've got a podcast as well. So don't forget, we run FinTV. So tune in to see me, yours truly, here, ask questions of people, put them on the hot seat and ask them questions about what's working and what's not working, what's been successful. So please watch our podcast series. Lastly, thank you very much for attending Scopa. We look forward to seeing you again at the next event. Thank you so much, everyone.